So I could give you and read off bios, but I'm sure that they're going to be able to do a much better job of introducing their work. So what I'll do is give each panelist a chance to give you a little bit of background on who they are and why they're here, and then we'll get into the conversation. So first is Winston Chen. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Winston Chen. Well, I was born here, not very far from here. I grew up near in this area, the plateau, and then I grew up in Putin-Ash later on. So I started to be from, my parents are Chinese, are immigrants, and I grew up here in Montreal. So I became a chiropractor. I went to study being a chiropractor out of my practice, and since then I became also involved with the Young Chamber of Commerce. I became the president of the Young Chamber of Commerce Federation. Then I also been involved with entrepreneurs, with immigrant entrepreneurs here at the University of Montreal Business School, HEC. And I've been also involved with G20, Business 20 on the education and entrepreneurship task force. So that was busy as well. So I'm glad to be here.
And that's how we met. We met at the G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance in Germany. David?
So good night, everyone. Hope that you're doing good. My name is David. I'm originally from Colombia, so I'm Latin American, and I think that is a characteristic that I really hold into myself. And I'm part of an organization that is called AIESEC. It's an organization that believes in something really simple, and is that to achieve peace and fulfillment of humankind's potential, we need to develop youth. We need to develop certain leadership skills in youth for them to have a fulfilling life, for them to have a better opportunity to enter the job market and to develop themselves. That is really simply what AIESEC do, but through my experience I'm going to take you a little. In 2015, Colombia as a country was living a really particular process. It was the process of peace of Colombia. One of the things that AIESEC did at that point is that we gathered youth from different territories, different cities, and we decided to send a letter to the people that were negotiating the peace in our country. In that letter, we were saying, as youth, we believe that these are the components that are essential for us to have peace in Colombia. That is the kind of things that AIESEC do. Then 2 years after, I ended up in France. And I ended up being the country coordinator for AIESEC in France. And one experience really particular is when you come from another context to a country that you don't know, you understand a lot of things. For example, I was president during the year of the Gilets jaunes. And that was really particular to see how the youth react. And with the local presidents of AIESEC in France, we sent a letter to the universities to allow the people to have debates about the current systems and the great conversation that the President Macron was having in their own universities. Right now, I am part of the international office of AIESEC as Global Head of Innovation. I arrived to Montreal 4 months ago, so I'm getting ready for winter. As a Colombian, I don't know how ready I am. I already bought the boots and the big jacket. I think that I'm ready. But I had the opportunity of working in different things, and the current project that I'm developing is called Youth Speak. That is a global survey to analyze what is the understanding of youth over 3 topics. Sustainable development goals, and the second one is the future of work, and the third one is leadership.
I feel like I would just want to be part of the audience and listen to your stories. So I'm Hugo. From We Charity, l'organisme uni en français. I was born on the south shore of Quebec City. And been in Montreal for over 15 years now, and I'm in charge of francophone educational partnerships with our organization. So maybe some of you are familiar with We Day or La Journée Unie, which is our most famous event that we organize, but it's only a small part of everything that we do at We Schools. So we're a Canadian organization that was born 25 years ago and founded by a 12-year-old who was shocked by the death of another 12-year-old in Pakistan, Iqbal Masih, who was himself a former slave. and had been working in rug factories. But when he was freed, instead of just going back home, Iqbal Masih decided to go around the world and tell people about, about his situation and what they can do to act and, make and stop child slavery. But unfortunately, he was murdered by the same people who had enslaved him earlier in his life. That made the news here in Canada, and Craig Kilberger, the founder of our organization, was inspired by him and decided to take action. But wherever he called at first, people were telling him, where are your parents? Please, just pass the phone on to your parents. And then he said, no, I want to take action as a youth. And that's how the first, he informed himself, built a presentation, presented it to his classmates, and that's how 12-year-olds founded the first We Schools group in their school, and now we're in 18,000 schools in Canada, the US, and the UK, empowering youth to act upon the causes they care about, and really trying to bridge the gap in that small space where you have youth that care about something and want to do something, or are shocked by what they see in the news or what they hear around them, but want to take action, but don't necessarily have the tools to do it. So we, in my job as working with educational partners, I work with school boards, other organizations, trying to find the best structural ways to put our resources to their service to help youth take action upon the causes they care about. And on a side note, I'm also extremely passionate about social entrepreneurship and a graduate of the Social Economy Management Program at l'École des Sciences de la Gestion de l'UQAM.
Thank you. So I'm really excited for this panel because all of your backgrounds are multifaceted, but in particular, when we're looking at kind of building upon each of your stories and your experiences, to start off, I'm curious to know, in your perspective, what is the current challenge or gap that you see, looking at it from Winston, business entrepreneurship, David, from your AIESEC is a lot of global policy and advocacy, and then Hugo, education. So we have a really great kind of mix of perspectives here. So to start out, what do you feel is the current gap, or the ones that you have observed so far?
So I would say, well, I base my personal experience. It's my story is my internal struggle. It's to able to be included in the different high-level spheres. So wherever I go, I always become the first minority, in that space, either in business, in education, in the profession. So it's always so I always got doubt, ask myself, am I good enough to be here? And what am I to be able to propose that kind of different innovative solutions, outside of the box? So I think the first thing is the person itself, myself, and I think there will be a lot of challenges because I think that the first thing I have to be able to do is to be able to comfortable that and accept that you're different, no matter what you're doing. So if you're able to accept that you're a maverick or a different person, whatever you do, you're able to innovate because you're not scared to be part of the status quo or to conform with the whole community. So that's how I see it. A person that wants to make changes, you have to accept that you're yourself, you're different yourself.
It's very hard to innovate inside the box. So sometimes it's actually great to be different because you're outside of the way other people think and what currently is the system that you want to change. And David?
So first of all, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think that is the first struggle of every entrepreneur, every innovator, and is to understand yourself and be able to break those barriers that you have over yourself. So totally agree. But I want to focus my answer on one specific concept, and is to listen. I think that is the gap in 3 different ways. The first one, and is the project that I work right now, how the institutions, governments, and other companies and other organizations are not being able to listen youth and to listen the needs of youth in general. there is something very particular. I was in a meeting in Toronto at the beginning of the week, and I was meeting with people from some companies, and they were starting to say, super excited about the survey that I'm developing. Yeah, we are going to finally understand the millennials. The millennials are people that have 40 years, already have 3 kids, and are developing a new generation, and are the ones already commanding the workforce. And I was like, we arrived a little late to be able to listen the past generation. And it was the same thing with the past generation, and the same thing with the past generation. So the first thing is to be able to listen to the youth, have amazing stories like the story that you tell us, or your own story of young people that are changing the world. I think that we don't have infrastructure that allows us to listen to youth. Second thing in terms of listen that I believe that is important is the ability to listen to others. One of the big problems that I see in all the initiatives that we have around the world is that we are atomized. So you have one initiative here, one initiative here, one initiative here, and we don't have the mentality of just sitting and listening. Okay, your initiative is really similar, and I can understand how can we construct something different or construct something bigger out of the things that we are building independently. So I think that organizations like Bridging the Gap that allows to go to different places and to teach people how to do this kind of experiences is really valuable. But unfortunately, there is a lot of initiatives around the world that work for the same cause, but they are not able to connect between each other. So listening to others is important. And the third thing, totally connected to what you were saying, is to listen to yourself. And sometimes that is the most complicated thing. Because as a young person, I feel sometimes that because of the barriers or social concepts, I'm afraid to take in a step towards the things that I want to do. So I studied law back in Colombia. And I studied law basically because my parents told me, you study law, and that is a thing that's going to give you money, position and everything. But it was not the thing that I wanted to study. So like that personal barrier that you were talking, I'm totally connected, and it's the ability of listening also to yourself, your passions, and how that can contribute to the community that you live in.
I really like the way you concluded, because it's exactly what I was going to say. We have an equation that we always present to the youth. Maybe you've heard it before. Anna Halpern has promoted it on social media as well with the youth we work with. And it's a very simple equation, but I think even as grown-ups, we can apply it to ourselves. And it's passion plus cause equals change. And that comes a little bit to what you said in terms of being able to listen to your environment, to the social opportunities that are out there, and the ways you can act upon the world and make it better, but also knowing yourself and finding ways to use what you love to do to make that difference. And through the education system, and I know that's been said for many times and for many years, but it's still a challenge that we have a system that is very traditional in the sense that we have information that's being filled into, students are seen as vases that are being filled with information and knowledge. And that's dangerous, because you end up with people who have a lot of knowledge, but in the 21st century. And when you look at the 21st century competencies, which you might have heard about, 6 of them have been identified by the Council of Ministry of Educations in Canada as key competencies. And one of them is complex problem resolution. Another one is collaboration. Another one is citizenship. And you don't address any of those 6 competencies by just filling a vase. If you want people to be able to address complex problems, such as the ones the world faces right now, and even the ones industries face right now with the problems from le problème de la main-d'œuvre and finding enough employees and competent employees to fill in different complex positions, or just issues of having a good CSR within your business, a good corporate social responsibility, or understanding the millennials or things like that. You know, those are complex problems. You need people who can address those problems. And I think that a good way to change the education system is to give more power to the students, and then guide them through projects where they will, by themselves, identify issues around them in their community. And by community, I mean it in the local and global sense, because we're citizens of Montreal, but also of the world. And then find ways that they can use what they like to do to address those issues in a way that is smart, significant, measurable, smart goals and all this, and then build a project. And through this experience, they will learn. And teachers, it's changing now more and more. Teachers are equipped to build those sorts of projects in their classrooms and in their schools, and then integrate the competencies development in this process. And it's easily done. And the educators who do it don't go back, because they see the progress in their students and the motivation. Because not only do they lead a project, an entrepreneurial style project, but they're motivated because they see the difference they're making in the world or in their community. And that's a driver that you can't replace.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So one of our research studies that we did across Canada, nearly 50% of young people are concerned with the ability to adapt to the labor force, and that their skills will be relevant by the time they graduate. And only 1 in 3 feel that colleges and universities are doing a good job of preparing them for their future. The reality is that a lot of the skills that you mentioned are soft skills, and they're not hard skills, because our hard skills change too quickly with the rapid changes in technology and innovation. But the soft skills of collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, design thinking, like all these types of...
Emotional intelligence.
Yes, and a new one actually I just learned recently when I was speaking at the United Nations in the summer, human literacy. Human literacy is the skills of the future, because understanding people is at the essence of every business, solution, leadership role. It's so essential, especially when you're talking about how robotics and all this stuff is coming into our lives. Human literacy becomes more important than ever before. So I really like that you touched on that. Interesting enough, so each of your comments, amazing, each of them. And you touched on different aspects that I really like. And I wanted to kind of build upon that, because I got feedback a lot from programming. Kind of, it's great. Understanding the gaps is one thing, but then what's next? Like, how can we solve those gaps? What can we do? And so entrepreneurial thinking and experience is relevant across all these contexts. Not just for students, but when their skills are changing every 2 to 3 years, being entrepreneurial to be able to problem solve and all these things are relevant even for executives and young professionals in the workplace now. So what are, do you have any advice for individuals who are passionate about the experiences or gaps that you've acknowledged on what they could do to help bridge that gap, or like what they could do to help solve that challenge, even in the local context? It doesn't have to be at a grand scale, but what are some ways that we could tangibly look to address some of these challenges?
It's a very good question. So one thing I learned in my past experience is the ability to work with somebody from a different background. So that helps better social inclusion. So it's first step, I think, is to be open to work with somebody that's, if you're French Canadian, work with somebody that's English-speaking Canadian. Can be people from other ethnicities, from other that has a different profession, from different way of how they think politically. So they're able to be open to dialogue, to able to communicate and dialogue with these people, and ultimately, if you've been able to work as a team, that helps solve different problems. If you work as a team with people from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and different also different gender, of course, also different way of thinking. Because it can be also different political ideology. If you're able to work with them and you can solve problems together, that's I think the best ability you can have. So, and that also helps you foster inclusion, because that's how I think we need more. What's happening in the world right now? We saw in France with the Gilets jaunes. We see in Italy what's happening. We see south of the border, the States. There's a growing populism, and people are blaming the other people that don't look the same. So we, as a society, we have to work with people that are able to work with different backgrounds. So that's, I think, the most important skill in the 21st century.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, I totally agree. I totally identify because I work in the global headquarters of AIESEC here in Montreal, like 10 minutes walking from here, and we are 26 young people from 21 different nationalities. And that kind of experience is absolutely different than any kind of work that you can have. When you need to understand how to deliver a project with one person of Kenya, one person of Morocco, one person of Singapore, one person of Brazil, and everyone with their own conceptions, with their own priorities and ways of seeing the things, when you manage to do that, a lot of things you learn that you are not going to learn in a normal classroom. And my advice, being complementary to the initial advice, will be we need to stop thinking that the university is a place. The word university comes from the universality of knowledge, from the understanding or ability of trying to seek knowledge and wisdom. And at some point, we stop thinking that university means that, and we start to think that university means an institution that we go, we receive food and we are filled all the time, and we go graduate, take a diploma, and thank you so much, bye, I go to the workforce. I think that my advice for the people, first of all, go and have experiences with people that are different from you. And the second one, seek knowledge. Because, of course, we can put the absolute blame on the institution. Yeah, that's okay, and the government. And there is a lot of bad things and good things, and you can have the opinion that you want. But in the current state of the fast-changing market, is going to depend a lot on the individual seeking for knowledge and seeking opportunities for self-development. So my advice is online courses, talk with different people, try to discuss with different topics, and really specific for me, listen to other generations. Because I believe that millennials especially, we are having a huge mistake, and is that we are setting ourselves apart from the older generations. Just because a person has 60 years, they have 3 times more experience than you. In what? In life. Meaning that they handle things that you don't handle yet. And learning and sitting and listening, you can learn so much from people that have just more years than you. So I think that is really important for the current generation.
Yeah, I think, I totally agree. And I think it's so important to surround yourself with people that think differently than you, especially when you're an entrepreneur and or an intrapreneur within your own business, leading a project. You have this idea in your mind and it's so clear, and you just head into it like a bulldozer, but sometimes you forget that that makes you sort of forget everything that's around you. And then if you stop and listen to other perspectives or the ideas of people who think different than you, even if it might upset you at start, because people challenge your first ideas, you will learn and you might adapt your project, and it will be better in the end. So it's definitely something individually that we all have to do. And second, definitely keep learning. And I have myself started, I studied in communications, worked in educational tourism, traveled, worked in business development, and now I work with youth. And a lot of that has been achieved through learning, and not only in universities or online classes, but within the jobs you have right now. There are opportunities. They have a seminar, they have this online training, this lunch and learn thing. Go and you'll learn, you'll meet other people who share interests with you, and it's going to be good for you in the end. Because all these knowledge, and going back to your original question, trying to address, and how do you fill that gap between, I care so much about those causes, but I open TV and I see that the GX says that we have 10 more years before it's the end of the world, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. Then go back and speak to the people who think differently than you. Try to learn some stuff in books, in online courses. We do an exercise with you that we call root cause analysis, and we just make them, define the problem as a plant or a flower, identify the roots, the things like the sun or the weather that can influence the problem, and the symptoms, and differentiate one from another. And just doing that exercise, for yourself, not necessarily drawing up a flower, but is going to help you sometimes identify, okay, I can act upon this element that is a factor that affects the problem, or this element that's one of the roots, and then you'll find a clear way to act upon the causes you care about and make a difference.
That's a perfect summary. Just to kind of summarize and touch on that, perception is reality, and your perception is limited by your current knowledge, aka the education that you've had, or your environment, and your lived experiences. So the more that we can broaden the collective of the lived experiences and knowledge, the more encompassing our solutions can be. So brilliant, thank you. Before we close off the panel, I just want to open it up if there's any questions from the audience at all for any of our panelists.
Winston Chen, I think you started off perfectly talking about how sometimes self-doubt could be the reason why you don't approach some things, or sometimes you're at that table, quote unquote, but then the very fact that you see yourself as different, or as, oh, am I good enough? I'm going to give out as much as somebody, as the person sitting next to me and whatnot. All that self-doubt that comes with your daily approaches. Maybe you could tell us how you get around those and how you manage to say, okay, you know what?
Good question.
Yes, sometimes there is the self-doubt, and yes, sometimes some people that are there are way qualified than, I don't know how we could be more qualified than being a doctor, but so how do you just quiet that voice so that you can be able to perform or give your very best when you're in those situations?
Okay, thank you. It's a very good question. I can tell you a story. Well, I started to network by being a member of the Young Chamber of Commerce in Montreal. So it's many years ago, 1,500 members in Montreal, and professional entrepreneurs and business people. So I wanted to. So I was the first year was involved. I went to all the activities, be part of all the different committees as a volunteer, and then I applied to be on the board of the Young Chamber of Commerce. So I was so I passed the interview. I applied, sent my CV. So I refused the first year. So I it's okay. So the next year I continued to go to all the activities, and there was activities once or twice a week. So being volunteer in different committees. And the second time I applied, didn't get on the board as well. So it's difficult to know at that time the board was it's all very homogeneous. It's very white. So I tried to pass the what I call the bamboo ceiling. Tried to be able to go past that, and so after the second time I failed to be part of that board. So I tried to see what can I do better. So I tried to what I did is I tried to interview the people, the past members of the boards, to understand more the role of the board. So able to go to the extra mile and try to understand. So and the third time, I was able to be part of that board, and later on, he helped me also later on to be the president of the federation of the all the young chambers in Quebec, which represent around 7,000 members. But since then, it helped me to able to be as a young person to able. You have to give. It's pretty sad to say, but giving 100% is not enough. So you have to give. You have to go the extra mile. That's the thing. So you have to accept that you have to work harder than other people. Life is unfair. It's unfair, but that's how it is life. So that's the best advice is able to go to. You go the extra mile, and somehow you were able to fit in that kind of space, even though you feel different. In my case, in that board, the Chamber of Commerce.
I think building on that, what you said is also just creating a space and opportunity for understanding. The fact it's not you went the extra mile, but you also connected with those who made the decision and created a place of understanding for them to see you in your full light and also understand where they were coming from, which I believe probably helped in the third round when you did get on. So yeah, I think it is also a lot of times sometimes coming to understanding that ignorance can be fixed with education, knowledge, and lived experience. So the more when you create opportunities for individuals to understand more who you are and your experiences and vice versa. Oftentimes, most conflicts in the world are usually on misunderstandings or lack of knowledge, where they're educated on one perspective and they think that perspective is correct and not knowing the other side of the story. So oftentimes conversation can be a really good solution to that as well.
If I can add something, one of my colleagues at WE, prior to working at WE, was teaching entrepreneurship with groups of women at La Commission Scolaire de Montréal. Women from all different came, people who were changing careers, people who were newly arrived to Canada. And she told me once, the first obstacle was always doubt. And she said, I saw so many competent women who were, it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough, or if I have all the competencies required, or if I have everything that's needed. And she said, a lot of what I was doing during that class was just teaching them that it's normal not to have everything. It's a process. You'll face challenges. Maybe you'll face des échecs. You'll fail and you'll have to go up back again. But also there's a big network. You have to now, you can search. Just, in terms of social innovation in Montreal, la Maison de l'Innovation Sociale as a social incubator, la Forum Jeunesse de l'Île de Montréal avec la, how is it called? They have also a social innovation incubator, Sismic, social enterprise innovator. There are a lot, and if you just look around, you will find help and support and people who will encourage you and maybe bridge that little and help you with the competencies where you feel you're less, you have a bit to learn, but even if you don't have to be perfect, and your model doesn't have to be perfect for you to jump in. It's like being a parent, I guess. You can't really be ready. You just have to do it, and then things will happen.
Or swimming. Just done.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing some of your insights. If you have any further questions, please do bring them forward. I'm sure they would be happy to answer them. And also online, you can use our hashtag PTGTYouth, and we'll answer some questions online as well. So thank you.
Thank you.